The life of Princess Sophie Friederike Auguste, better known to the world as Catherine the Great, unfolds like a high-stakes drama charged with ambition, intrigue, and revolution. In this video, we plunge straight into her humble Prussian beginnings, tracking the rebellious spark in a young girl who would ultimately reboot an entire empire. Expect dueling mothers, lethal court politics, whirlwind romances, coup d'etat plot twists, and a crown stitched with nearly 5,000 diamonds. No classroom monotone here. We're hitting play on a cinematic journey packed with binge-worthy storytelling, immersive sound design, and visuals that teleport you to candlelit ballrooms and smoke-filled battlefields. Whether you're a history buff, a strategy game addict, or simply chasing inspiration from one of the most relentless self-made rulers in history, stay tuned. Every scandal, victory, and heartbreak is narrated in crisp, modern English. Hit subscribe, crank the volume, and let's ride with Catherine all the way from pawn to empress. Stettin, 1729. A spring rain drums softly on the slate roofs of a modest palace in Stettin, a Prussian port city, hugging the Oder River's muddy banks. The air carries the river's scent, wet earth, faint fish, and the tang of trade, while inside a low-ceilinged birthing chamber, a midwife scrubs her hands on starched linen, her movements precise despite the late hour. She lifts a scrunched, red-faced infant, still slick from birth, and presents her to a cluster of relatives huddled in flickering candlelight. Their faces, etched with fatigue and cautious hope, soften as they murmur the child's name, Princess Sophie Friederike Auguste of Anhalt-Zerbst. The title, a Baroque cascade of syllables, sounds more like a diplomatic treaty than a birth announcement, yet it cannot mask her precarious place in the sprawling hierarchy of European dynasties. In the grand chessboard of 18th century nobility, Sophie is a pawn, born to a family of limited means and lesser influence. Her father, Prince Christian August of Anhalt-Zerbst, is a man of earnest piety, his brow perpetually furrowed by financial strain. His days are consumed with military duties and the endless arithmetic of dowries, debts, and alliances, leaving little time to notice the spark of defiance already glinting in his daughter's gray-blue eyes. Those eyes, sharp and observant even in infancy, seem to catalog the world with precocious intensity. Her mother, Princess Johanna Elizabeth of Holstein-Gottorp, is a different creature entirely. Built from ambition as sturdy as the oak planks of a warship, Johanna is polished, calculating, and designed to navigate the treacherous currents of court politics. At dinner, over meager portions of boiled beef and rye bread, she recounts snippets of court gossip with the fervor of a sports commentator, each syllable measured for maximum impact. Her voice rises and falls, weaving tales of scandals, betrothals, and betrayals from distant capitals, Vienna, Versailles, Berlin. Sophie, seated ramrod straight on a cushioned chair too tall for her small frame, absorbs every word, her mind a sponge soaking up the ink of her mother's narratives. Johanna's vision for her daughter is unrelenting, to mold Sophie into a princess marketable enough to secure a dynastic marriage that could elevate the family's fortunes. The training begins early, a curriculum as rigorous as any military academy. French supplants German as the household's lingua franca, a language of prestige that Johanna insists must flow from Sophie's lips as naturally as breath. Etiquette lessons start before the child's milk teeth give way to permanent ones, drilling the art of curtsies, the angle of a bowed head, the precise timing of a smile. By age 7, Sophie can glide across the palace's worn parquet floors with such silent grace that servants whisper she must float an inch above the ground. By 10, She wields a folding fan with the crisp authority of a judge's gavel, each snap and flutter a coded signal of intent. Yet for all this polish, Sophie's edges remain stubbornly unrefined. She clambers up apple trees in her petticoats, heedless of torn lace. She gallops imaginary steeds down echoing corridors, brandishing broomsticks as lances. She sneaks into the armory to prod at sabers, delighting in the metallic zing they sing when struck. Her nannies, exasperated but fond, dub her Fike, a nickname that blends affection with a warning label, as if to say, handle with care, contents volatile. Afternoons are reserved for intellectual rigor, a parade of tutors, their coats dusted with chalk and their patience fraying, drill Sophie in Latin declensions, Protestant scripture, the geometry of star-shaped fortifications, and the delicate art of flattery. She consumes it all with voracious appetite, her mind a furnace stoked by curiosity. When lessons end, she slips into the palace library, a dimly lit room smelling of leather and mildew, to plunder forbidden treasures, Moliere's biting comedies, Plutarch's lives with their tales of conquerors, and travelogues from sailors who describe pineapples in Barbados or monsoons in Bengal. She copies passages in a looping, meticulous script, her quill scratching late into the night. In the margins, she scribbles notes that betray a mind already plotting beyond Zerbst's provincial walls. Memorize this for dowry negotiations beside a diplomatic anecdote. Could rule like Caesar if needed, next to a passage on Roman triumphs. Beneath the silk ribbons and starched collars, a strategist is taking shape, her ambition sharpening like a blade on a whetstone. Opportunity arrives in 1744, cloaked in the form of a letter sealed with the double-headed eagle of the Romanov dynasty. Empress Elizabeth of Russia, a monarch known for her opulent court and capricious whims, seeks a bride for her nephew and heir, Karl Peter Ulrich of Holstein-Gottorp, known simply as Peter. The boy, a distant cousin of Sophie's through tangled dynastic lines, is the key to Russia's imperial succession. Johanna's instincts flare like a hawk spotting prey. Within days, the household erupts into chaos. Trunks are packed, dresses mended, and itineraries scribbled. Mother and daughter embark on a grueling journey across Europe, their carriage rattling through mud-choked roads, snow-dusted forests, and rumor-filled inns. Slush splatters the carriage windows, turning them into mottled mirrors where Sophie studies her reflection. A high forehead, a straight Greek nose, and eyes that flicker with cunning. To pass the hours, she practices Russian phrases cribbed from a diplomat's phrasebook, Zdravstvuyte, hello, spasibo, thank you, and in a moment of private mischief, Vasha korona pokhoja na pirog, your crown looks like a pie. She stifles a giggle but repeats the phrase, perfecting the accent. In a court where every syllable could be a weapon, pronunciation matters. Their arrival in Holstein, a damp and drafty duchy on the Baltic fringe, sets the stage for a meeting that could have been scripted for comedy. Inside a cavernous hall, Peter awaits. A gangly 11-year-old with a complexion as pale as a boiled turnip, his attention riveted to a tabletop battlefield of tin soldiers. Sophie executes a flawless curtsy, her skirts pooling like spilled ink. Peter, startled, fumbles and sends Napoleon's cavalry clattering to the floor. Their exchange is a clumsy dance of misaligned languages, her French stilted, his German halting. Blushes flare, apologies tangle, and both retreat to opposite corners of the room. Courtiers, their smirks barely concealed behind lace cuffs, cough to mask their amusement. That night, in a diary entry scrawled by candlelight, Sophie records her impressions with surgical precision. He appears delicate, absorbed, otherworldly, perhaps unsuited for husbandry. The phrase is diplomatic code for absolutely not, but dynastic chess offers no opt-out clause. She is a piece on the board, and the game is in motion. Back in Zerbst, Sophie throws herself into preparation with the intensity of a general before a campaign. Russian grammar becomes her nemesis, a labyrinth of cases and conjugations that she attacks with relentless focus. At midnight, when the palace is silent save for the creak of settling beams, she paces the corridors, her bare feet slapping cold floorboards as she chants verb forms, govorit, govoryu, budu govorit, until servants whisper she's possessed by some linguistic demon. Her obsession takes a toll. Fever seizes her, followed by pneumonia, then pleurisy. Doctors, their wigs askew, bleed her with leeches until the room spins and her veins feel hollow. She survives through sheer defiance, waking each dawn with lungs burning, but her resolve unyielding. By the time she departs for Russia, she is frail but armed with a working knowledge of its language and a will forged in fire. June 1744, St. Petersburg. The Russian capital's skyline pierces the horizon, golden spires, onion domes, and gilding that dazzles like a second sun. Sophie steps onto Russian soil, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth, and immediately wins Empress Elizabeth's favor with a gesture both calculated and fervent. She kisses the Orthodox cross with such devotion that it leaves a faint red imprint on her forehead. The act is a masterstroke, signaling her willingness to embrace Russia's faith and culture. She sheds her Lutheranism as one might discard an outgrown coat, adopting the Russian Orthodox faith and trading her German name for a Slavic one, Ekaterina Alexeyevna, Catherine. The transformation is as seamless as a software update, rebooting her identity for a new imperial operating system. In letters home, written in a careful hand, she declares, "I feel forged anew." The words blur the line between genuine zeal and strategic branding, a duality Catherine will wield like a blade for decades. Her wedding on August 21st, 1745, is a spectacle of choreographed grandeur. Cathedral bells toll through St. Petersburg's humid air, their clangor reverberating in the chests of the gathered crowd. Catherine walks the aisle in a gown of cloth of silver, its threads catching the candlelight like starlight on a frozen lake. Beside her stands Peter, now 18 but still a spectral figure, half boy, half imitator of his idol, Frederick the Great. He fidgets, his brow beaded with sweat, and nearly trips over the train of her gown. Their vows, exchanged in halting Russian, bind them in a union that is fairy tale in optics, but doomed in substance. As they ride from church to palace, Muscovites line the streets, their cheers rolling Catherine's new name with affectionate, guttural R's. Behind the pageant, the marriage is a non-starter. Peter drinks heavily, spends nights arranging toy soldiers in mock battles, and flirts openly with mistresses. Catherine, meanwhile, retreats into study, devouring Montesquieu's treatises on governance, military manuals, and maps of Russia's vast frontiers, her mind scanning for escape routes and leverage points. The court becomes a pressure cooker of whispers and expectations. Courtiers track the couple's bedroom activities with the zeal of bookmakers, but months pass without a royal pregnancy. Physicians prod, priests intone prayers, and rumors sharpen into needles. Catherine, ever adaptive, shifts strategies. If Peter cannot or will not secure the succession, she will. She turns her attention to Sergei Saltykov, a cavalry officer whose fox fur eyelashes and artillery fire confidence make him a walking temptation. Their affair, conducted behind tapestries and in the shadows of carriage interiors, is as much a political maneuver as a romantic one. 9 months later, Under the glow of chandeliers, in a palace birthing room, Catherine endures labor while midwives hold their breath. A boy, Paul, emerges, ruddy, squalling, and immediately claimed by Empress Elizabeth, who whisks him away to be raised as a living icon of Romanov continuity. Catherine, exhausted and hollowed by the ordeal, catches only a fleeting glimpse of her son before the nursery doors close with a thud. Loneliness becomes her crucible, forging intellect from isolation. Barricaded in her study, surrounded by the scent of ink and wax, Catherine annotates Enlightenment texts, Voltaire, Diderot, Rousseau, with quills dipped in midnight oil. She drafts essays arguing that sovereigns exist to serve their subjects, not vice versa, but locks them in secret drawers. Such ideas, if voiced publicly, could be branded treason. Between paragraphs, she embarks on another clandestine romance, this time with a courtier whose name history barely records. The result is a daughter, Anna, frail as a candle flame. When Anna dies at 14 months, grief carves Catherine's resolve into something harder, more unyielding, like steel tempered by fire. The turning point arrives on January 5th, 1762, when Empress Elizabeth dies, and Peter III ascends the throne. His reign is a masterclass in self-sabotage. He reverses Russia's hard-won victories in the 7 Years' War, pivots loyalty to Prussia, and alienates his imperial guards by forcing them into itchy Prussian-style uniforms. Catherine, pregnant again, this time by guardsman Grigory Orlov, a man whose loyalty matches his brawn, hears the clink of sabers in palace shadows and senses her moment approaching like a storm on the steppe. On July 9th, 1762, at a gray dawn, Catherine acts. Dressed in a simple riding habit, her hair pinned tightly, she mounts a carriage and speeds toward the Ismailovsky barracks. Inside walls reeking of gun oil and damp straw, she faces rows of soldiers, their faces weathered but attentive. Her plea, part vulnerable supplicant, part veiled commander, electrifies them. She begs protection from Peter's erratic rule, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. The response is a roar. Long live Catherine the Empress. The cry echoes off stone, sparking a chain reaction. 2 more regiments pledge loyalty. Priests crown her with a travel icon of Saint Nicholas, its silver frame cool against her brow. By noon, St. Petersburg's cannons boom in acclamation, their thunder drowning out the last vestiges of Peter's reign. Cornered, Peter abdicates. 8 days later, he is dead, officially of hemorrhoidal colic, unofficially strangled in a scuffle orchestrated by Alexei Orlov, Grigory's brother. Catherine issues sanitized bulletins, pays off gossip mongers at market rates, and ascends the throne with a face serene as polished marble. Coronation Day, September 22, 1762, is a triumph of theater and power. Moscow's Dormition Cathedral hums beneath crystal chandeliers, their light fracturing into rainbows on the mosaic floor. Catherine lifts the new imperial crown, 4,936 diamonds, radiating around a fist-sized spinel, and settles it on her head with a practiced twist, as if locking a vault. Trumpets blare, blending Eastern Orthodox chants with Western orchestral flourishes into a single glittering moment of absolute authority. Her pulse, hidden beneath layers of velvet and ermine, drums a silent command. Modernize, expand, outshine every autocrat, living or dead. Her reign begins with bold domestic reforms. She convenes the Legislative Commission, inviting nobles, merchants, Cossacks, and even Siberian tribes to debate a new legal code. Delegates arrive in a kaleidoscope of transport, sleighs, camels, river barges, each clutching petitions thick as cathedral missals. The sessions dissolve into a cacophony of grievances and petty rivalries, But Catherine listens, her quill scratching notes. She gleans vital intelligence, tax burdens crushing peasants, land disputes fracturing loyalties, social fault lines she can later exploit like a grandmaster moving pawns. On the foreign stage, she plays for high stakes. The Ottoman Empire threatens Russia's southern trade routes, so Catherine unleashes Admiral Orlov's fleets. At Chesma Bay in 1770, Russian guns turn the night sea into a cauldron of flame, sinking Ottoman ships in a victory that reverberates across Europe. In Poland, she installs her former lover, Stanislaw Poniatowski, as king, then orchestrates the first partition of Poland with Prussia and Austria when his reforms veer too close to independence. Critics denounce her as ruthless. She files their complaints under necessary collateral and presses forward. Culture becomes her soft power weapon. She scours Parisian auction houses, amassing old master paintings, Rembrandt, Rubens, Titian, stacking canvases in a private gallery she names the Hermitage, a sanctuary of art and ambition. She writes satirical comedies, lampooning corrupt officials, submitting them anonymously to theaters, and relishing the audience's laughter at jokes the censors cannot trace to her. When smallpox ravages Russia in 1768, she summons English physician Thomas Dimsdale and undergoes inoculation in full view of the court, or at least its painters, who capture the moment in oils. The resulting portrait, reproduced across the empire, is a masterstroke of public health propaganda, centuries before the term going viral exists. The bedroom, too, is a theater of power. Grigory Potemkin, a one-eyed giant with charisma as thick as borscht, storms into her life in the 1770s. Lover, strategist, and possibly secret husband, Catherine neither confirms nor denies the rumors, letting mystery fuel her legend. They draft war plans, art acquisitions, and the rotation of her future favorites with the precision of a military campaign. When their romance cools, Potemkin reinvents himself as talent scout, selecting successors who blend physical allure with political utility. Catherine rewards retirees with estates, serfs, and pensions, ensuring loyalty and silence. Moralists clutch their pearls. She keeps meticulous records. No rebellions from ex-lovers equals flawless human resource management. Peasant unrest, however, tests her grip. In 1773, Yemelyan Pugachev, a Cossack claiming to be the resurrected Peter III, ignites a serf rebellion. Villages burn, nobles flee, and Catherine responds with a two-pronged assault. Armies crush the uprising, while propaganda broadsheets brand Pugachev a deranged impostor. Captured, he is caged, paraded through Moscow, and executed, his head severed with a single stroke. Catherine's nerves fray, but her throne holds. She doubles down, granting nobles tighter control over serfs in exchange for their loyalty. A pragmatic bargain that her Enlightenment correspondents, Voltaire, Diderot, tactfully overlook. Her image is micromanaged with obsessive care. St. Petersburg's facades are redesigned in neoclassical symmetry. Streets widen to rival Paris. Canals lit by imported lanterns. The Winter Palace's corridors display monumental portraits of Catherine as Minerva, as Justice, as Russia's mother, while private cabinets conceal Giulio Romano's erotic two-lovers and furniture carved with suggestive motifs. Duality is her signature: public virtue, private indulgence. Personal quirks become court legend. Lacking musical ear, she times applause by watching her chamberlain's subtle nods. Her schedule is carved into 5-minute increments. A courier arriving at 6:06 instead of 6:05 risks a glacial stare. She rides horses astride, scorning side saddle's dainty constraints, and employs a foot tickler, a servant who scratches her ankles during endless councils to keep her blood flowing. Foreign pamphleteers spin this into lurid tales of equine fetishes, which Catherine, when informed, dismisses with a shrug, better infamous than forgettable. Potemkin's Crimean tour in 1787 is his magnum opus. Allegedly, he erects Potemkin villages, cardboard facades to impress Catherine with the illusion of prosperity. The truth is more nuanced. Some villages are theatrical sets, others genuine settlements lured by tax incentives. Catherine, sailing past on a silk-draped barge, waves to actors and settlers alike, embracing the spectacle as a tool of empire. Aging creeps in like frost on glass. Potemkin's death in 1791 carves a void, but Catherine refuses to linger in grief. She promotes younger generals, funds universities, and tightens censorship to block French revolutionary ideas. She toys with universal education, but shelves it when nobles protest. Regrets haunt her sleepless nights, sending her pacing marble halls, her shadow flickering under taper light, as she pins imagined letters to Voltaire about revolutions left unfinished. On November 16, 1796, Catherine rises at dawn, signs dispatches, sips coffee, and mentions a pleasant dream to her maid. Moments later, a thud echoes. Servants find her collapsed, her face flushed crimson. Doctors bleed, blister, and leech. She barely stirs. That evening, the official report cites apoplexy, a stroke. Unofficial rumors resurrect the horse libel, gleefully amplified by enemies. Embalmers anoint her with musk and myrrh, dress her in silver brocade, and display her body for 6 weeks as mourners and detractors file past, kissing her gloved hand. Her son Paul ascends and dismantles her legacy with vindictive zeal. Allies are spurned, noble freedoms curtailed, uniforms sprout epaulets like mushrooms. The nobility rebels. Within 5 years, Paul is strangled in his bedroom. Grandson Alexander, mentored by Catherine, takes the throne, navigating Napoleonic wars while expanding her universities. Catherine's afterlife is as vast as her empire. Historians debate her as enlightened despot or enlightened hypocrite. Feminists measure her against patriarchal barriers. Military scholars map her campaigns. Art lovers thank her for the Hermitage's treasures. The amber room she installed, lost in World War II, spawns conspiracy theories that would delight her love of intrigue.